Good evening, everybody, and welcome to this evening's executive. I'd like to open the meeting with number one. Have we got any apologies, Mark?
Apologies from Councillor Kevin Mitchell and Councillor Mark Hussain.
Okay, thank you. The minutes of the 5th of July, are you happy that I sign those as a true record of the meeting? Good, thank you. In a momento. Done. That's that done, thank you. Just to remind you about declarations of interest on what you need to do on all of that. Let me just sign that bit. And of course, number 4 is the fact that we have got some part 2 items, item 13 and 14, and representation on item 14. And before we go into those items, I will move the appropriate motion from the chair to put us into part 2. The item 5 is we've got a question from the member of the public, and we've got a question from Peter Cleesby. Peter, ask your question, please.
Thank you, Chair. The draft consultation document, this is on planning, states that members of the Livable Exeter Place Board engage communities and stakeholders to address the challenges in achieving the vision. How do board members engage those communities not represented by board members, and will the council please provide a recent example of them doing so? Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. I'm not sure I'll be able to elevate my tone as well as you did within the questions as I reply, but here is the reply for you. The Livable Exeter Place Board brings together a variety of leaders and individuals that have a responsibility for their own organisations or are influential people in their own right, such as the local MPs. Leaders of the city's institutions and individual businesses or charities are rooted in the locality, and they are able to inform discussion and shape issues based on a wealth of information gleaned from their staff and customers. Those organisations, for example, have asset management plans. They will be thinking of their long investment plans and how their organisations conduct their business to ensure cross-institutional cooperation to further the vision. Aspects of the city vision relate to the outcomes that require coordination of the city's infrastructure or organisation of activity aligned with strategic goals such as delivering the most active city in the country or delivering world-class education. No one organisation has the ability to achieve the goals. It needs organisations working together over a sustained period of time and work aligning physical infrastructure with funding and wraparound packages of support involving revenue expenditure and various bids into government departments. Coordinating infrastructure and collaboration is assisted by the existence of the Place Board. The Place Board brings together the elected leaders of Devon County Council and the City Council, the elected local MPs for Exeter, and the elected Police and Crime Commissioner, all of whom have their own processes and procedures for continually engaging with their constituents. This is complemented by the presence of the CEO of the Chamber of Commerce and the CEO of the Business Improvement District. Those organisations speak for a wide range of companies and have established ways of connecting with business. Further, our educational institutions, through the University of Exeter and Exeter College, have a mature working relationship with all the educational organisations in the city. To give one example, Professor Lee Elliott Major, who sits on the Place Board, now works on social mobility in the South West, levelling up through education. The The chair of the place board, Sir Steve Smith, was one of the people mentioned in the report in providing oversight, feedback and advice throughout the project. The proposals of the Commission directly address levelling up white paper's requirements and its 2030 missions on education and skills and ultimately living standards. The Commission illustrated how not all young people in Devon are enjoying the opportunities and benefits of prosperity. The chair of Devon Community Foundation works with the community and wellbeing support infrastructure developed in conjunction with the two local authorities and GPs. Whether through sport, culture, transport, development or health work on the COVID recovery plan demonstrated the ability of the Place Board to reach out to stakeholders in an agile fashion to reflect the long-term vision of the city and to translate this into short-term action. I think the city can be proud of the work it has done to work in a collaborative fashion and focused on the delivery of the vision.
Wow.
Yeah, I thought that.
Passing over for a moment who the constituents of the High Sheriff of Devon are.
I did mention George.
You did, but who are the No, you didn't. But she's on the Place Board. She is she not?
She was. She's there, not as that. She's not on the Place Board because she was the High. This is Lucy Studham, isn't it? She's there because of her work in the arts and culture. That's what she's on there for.
Okay. She's that
badge doesn't get her entry into the room.
She's publicised on your website as High Sheriff of Devon, never mind.
She was.
Oh, she's gone.
Yeah, she's not.
No.
Oh, I apologise, I'm out of it. Anyway.
I learnt this as well, Peter. Apparently it's handed around all over. It was a gift of the king some 400 or 500 years ago to keep the local populace in check or something.
Yeah, it's quite a bizarre arrangement.
I feel sure.
Feudalism.
Yeah,
Well,
I feel sure it was.
Not something the council is responsible for, so I won't go there. What I was going to say was, that I mean that's a very impressive sort of list of people who I can see, particularly the political leaders. I mean, John Hart's got tentacles into all sorts of things, including education and social care. I was just wondering, what about people who don't really belong to any particular sort of group? I mean, people like me, for example. Who's speaking for me on the Place Board?
On the Place Board?
Yeah.
I thought the question, this is more listening now to inquiry into the Place Board, and I'm always happy to receive questions. This was about livable Exeter and dealing with the local plan on how they're going to engage. That was what we were answering. You're now, although perhaps the long answer allows you to ask a supplementary of that way, and I fully understand that, but they will be consulting with people like you. I have no fear for you, Peter. You will ensure your voice is heard in whatever forum that you choose to express it. However, there are a lot of people, if you're saying of your peer group, and there are many ways to get involved within the planned process. Now, the paper will come up presently. We will discuss it in a moment about the plan, and it is quite clear, and all I will be reminding people is what is the recommendation before you at this meeting. In other words, we will be just putting the plan out there for consultation, which makes it perfectly clear that once that consultation has taken place, you know what we're going to do after that? We're going to consult again, and we will go through all the various processes. We will be developing, and I would suggest that you listen to Ian Collinson. I feel sure now he's prompted, he will make sure he will address that issue when he introduces the paper later on in the agenda on consultation, because I will have something to say about a particular group that I'm concerned about that never gets heard or rarely gets heard, and I will want to make sure that group is heard as well as any other group. So we will want to ensure, Peter, that people will get heard within the consultation process. and I hope I've answered your one supplementary that you're entitled to okay for now. Thank you. So, moving on, we've dealt with the question. I now need to move to number 6, which is, we've got 2 urgent items that we need to deal with, members. And the first one is the Household Support Fund extension. There's no recommendation as such, we just got to note the situation. I'm going to ask Bindu first to lead on it, and then I will ask Councillor Barbara Denning to add anything as the portfolio owner if she needs to. Bindu.
Thank you, Chair. Both of these urgent items relate to funds that the Council has been asked to administer on behalf of government as part of the support to households to address the current cost of living issues. Both of these schemes required us to have put measures in place before it would have allowed, as the report says, for the decision to have gone to Council. So the decision was made appropriately in consultation with the Chair of Scrutiny and the portfolio holder. The full information of the funds that have been made available has been made available to members through the Scrutiny Bulletin, either the last one or it will be, so the full details will be there. In addition, Chair, we have information about a number of other schemes that the Council has administered on behalf of government, and if it's useful, I think we can attach that. I think you might refer to it. But yeah, the details are before you, Chair, and happy to take any questions or provide any further information either now or subsequently.
Thank you, Bindu. Councillor Denning.
Thank you, Chair. It was great to be able to say that we give some much needed funds to people that is required during this cost of living crisis. Bindu quite rightly said it was like an emergency. We had to spend the money for the executive to look for it. I think we've done it very fairly. Okay, there's been people who perhaps one part of working age that have already had help, have one independent person or a child. Okay, and also the council tax energy rebate scheme for bands B to H, as I've said to Councillor Barrett before. Just because one person lives in a bigger house or whatever doesn't necessarily mean that they are cash rich, but they would have had some form of benefit from looking at it. I'm just happy that we were able to do this, and thank Bindu. And I'd also like to thank the housing officers and people who arranged the benefits for doing this so quickly. Okay, they worked very hard, and they really worked hard, and I would like to admit that my thanks for them for doing this so quickly. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Barbara. So just to say there, I have a paper here which I will ensure is attached to the minutes. It's on the support scheme statistics on what the numbers of people we have helped, and I'm glad we didn't circulate it. I just want to, yeah, it is the Homes for Ukraine payments and the guests in hopes. I want to make it perfectly clear that the £350 is a thank you payment for those people who are in the Homes for Ukraine scheme and takes other Ukrainians into their homes, as opposed to family members who do not receive the payment. I just want to make that personally clear on that one, just in case somebody wants to say something about that. It's a very important document, and I think when you look through, it's very impressive, and I think I would like, obviously, hopefully we'll adopt this in a moment, but I would like to record the executive's thanks to the staff who have carried out this work and will continue, I know full well, to carry out their support for people in hardship, because it's not over, by the way, and they will continue to. And when you see it, the levels of people that the council through these schemes have helped and supported in Exeter, all I would say is it must make a difference out there to people's well-being and their homes. So please take a look at that. Perhaps we can most probably get it out emailed quicker I'll talk to you about it. We'll get it. I'm seeing you tomorrow. We'll talk about it. We'll get it emailed out to the all councillors group, because I think they can see it quicker rather than wait for minutes to come through and everything else like that. A very important piece of information to show what we're doing. So, do we need a recommendation on this number 5, or are we just noting it, Mark? Number 6 rather.
It's just for noting, but just show of hands for all those in favour.
Okay. All those in favour?
Back to you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you.
very much.
And we move on now to item 7, which is also a further urgent item, which is council tax energy rebate discretionary scheme. Bindu.
It's the same principles, Judge. It's another scheme that we had to put the policy in place before we were able to come and consult you as we normally would.
Barbara, councillor Denny.
Dan Chair on this road and explained, I think number 7 before 1 does number 6, so I recommend so.
And I think that's important, that it's demonstrating that we are supporting people, not just where you live, but people who need the help regardless of where you live, and there are opportunities there. If people need that discretionary help, we're there and we will help people. And once again, it's all kept in confidence. People should apply and shouldn't be. If I can have a show of hands to support that number 7, all those in favour?
That has been carried.
Thank you. So, before I go on to item 8, I want a slight deviation, which is on this same theme. We are at the moment, there's an energy crisis, there's no recommendation, but I think it's important because the next executive is not until the 4th of October, and I am asking that something comes forward on the art of the possible. So I'm just going to ask Councillor Martin Pearce just to tell us, there's nothing being moved, just to tell us on the sorts of things that we're talking and who we're collaborating with at this moment in time. Councillor Pearce.
Thank you, Chair. It's really good to have the opportunity because, as you say, these meetings are quite spread out in times. It's a month till we get the next one, and the cost of living crisis that we're living through at the moment moves at a much faster pace than that. It's not just about energy bills, there's all sorts going on. We're living currently through the biggest drop in living standards in this country since the Napoleonic Wars. It's a tragedy what's going on, and there's so many people daily being plunged into situations that just a few years ago we would never have thought possible in this country, the 5th richest country in the world. Shocking how mismanagement after mismanagement has led us to this situation, but I want to focus positively on what we can do as a council, not just with the agility of officers that's just been demonstrated by the last couple of items in responding to government schemes, but actually what we can do here ourselves. And as I'm doing that, I want to offer a hand to the 2 leaders of the opposition groups here. If they wish to engage with this, we would welcome their contributions, and I'll be emailing you in the morning to see if we can set something up so that you can be part, because I think you both represent the only wards in the city where they don't have a Labour voice currently, so it's important that not only for your parties but for your constituents that you can feed into this process. But as a city council, we're very limited in what we can do statutory through the legislation, but that doesn't limit our ambition. So what we want to make sure, as this crisis worsens, which it will inevitably do sadly over the months ahead, is that we can provide some security, some solace, some safety for residents in this city. That's going to be looking to coordinate the response from the amazing community and voluntary sector that we've got here in this city, who have already swung into action. There are meetings planned. There's groups going to be going ahead throughout the next 2 or 3 weeks to try and plan what they can do, whether that's potentially exploring warm banks, where that's community spaces that can be open to people, whether that's expanding community food larders and where that can be distributed. Nothing is off the table, nothing is on the table at the moment, but we're going to explore as many ideas as possible, and that's where I would welcome your input, please, as we go forward. And as the leader said at the start, there'll be something coming, hopefully to the 4th on our next meeting, but we're aware and we're active, and we're going to be responding with every mechanism that we possibly can. We know it sadly won't be enough unless there's a change of government before the winter's over, which who knows. it seems that that might well be possible. There's been trails today that the new Prime Minister is going to adopt the Labour policy of freezing the energy bills. Sadly, she appears to be adopting her opponent in the Conservative election for their leadership. Rishi Sunak's failed policy of being a loan shark and making the public pay it back over the next 20 years. But eventually the public can get fed up. We need to cut out the middleman and we need a change of government. But until that happens, the City Council needs to try and step into some of these gaps. So thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you, Councillor Pearce. And indeed, we will be looking at it. And yes, I was listening to some news reports this afternoon, and I just caught the bit that said the Prime Minister's up in the air. And I thought, what? No, she was on a plane flight, that was it. And I thought, oh, so soon. But anyway, so we will wait and see what happens this week, because there's going to be announcements that's going to affect us all over the next few days. That is why I think something coming forward in October on what we can do, by the way, we are not the central government, on what we can do within the limited resources we have, we will want to try and do. So thank you for that brief update. I thought it was important we went through that, and we all enjoyed the political analysis as well. Thank you for that one, Martin. So we'll move on to item 9, item 8 even, racing on, which is the proposed adoption of the community asset transfer policy. So I'll ask you, Councillor Pearce, to give your apolitical recommendations on this matter.
So the recommendation is that Executive recommends to Council to adopt the community asset transfer policy.
Thank you. And from the officer, John Paul, so I'm going to ask John Paul Hedge and then Dawn Rivers just to introduce the paper. JP.
Thank you, Chair. I don't intend on going through the policy itself. Just to say they're increasingly considered to be good practice by the Local Government Association in terms of property portfolio management and enabling community empowerment and partnership. The reason we've done it is to provide a transparent, consistent and positive route map for any organisation in Exeter that wants to progress an application for a community asset transfer, and that's either a building or land belonging to the council. It comes off the back of survey research we did and community engagement. Dawn and her team spent a huge amount of time on this, and I'd just like to thank them for that, and we're very much here for any questions on that.
Well, before we go to questions, Dawn, would you like to add something? It's an important piece of work, long awaited.
Okay, I mean, the only thing to mention really is that this is practice that we already do implement in terms of long leases and asset transfer, and so members will be perhaps aware of the more recent transfers that have taken place with the Valley Parks to Devon Wildlife Trust, and also the Queen's Crescent Garden to St James Community Association. And so I think members will really recognise the real value in developing these partnerships with our community partners, because of all the additional resources and support that communities can offer to delivering really good practice within our communities. And it's a really strong way of developing our engagement and partnership with people in the city, and gives a real sense of ownership for people in the city. So that's all I wanted to mention really, but I'm happy to take any further questions.
Thank you, Dawn. And just to say, I have read the report. So I'm going to ask if any of the two leaders wish to make a remark or question. Councillor Moore first, and then I'll come to you.
Thank you very much. Very much welcome this policy. It's been a long time in the making, and it's pleasing to see the responses by the community sector as well. I'd like to propose a technical amendment, if the portfolio holder would be minded to include this, is that in 8.2 it doesn't mention community benefit societies, and so community benefit societies were created alongside formal legal structure of cooperatives in the Cooperative and Community Benefit Society Act 2014, so they're asset locked community organisations too. So I would very much hope that they could be just included in that section because they are very much community owned and led organisation, which is completely in spirit of this policy. Just a couple of observations. I would very much hope that the expectation in terms of the transfer of a building which might attract investment might have high expectations about environmental improvements to a building, and also that the council will be flexible about offering leases or heads of terms of leases before investment is raised rather than afterwards, because obviously there needs to be some security of that offer to potential investors. Thank you.
Before you come onto that one, because I need to speak to John, because I'm not sure we take amendments. There's no provision for an amendment to be moved to.
Well, I think Councillor Moore suggested whether the portfolio holder will be prepared to.
And I was going to come on to that after Anne would say, as to whether or not, once again, there's some technical detail in that. I would like the portfolio holder to take away that technical detail. I have no opposition to it whatsoever. Just want to make sure we're right, and then to ask him to take it away to make sure if that's all, because he's got to talk to people, if you see what I mean. There's been a lot of work on this, you know, and that's how I would look at it. But constitutionally, I didn't think there was amendments moved from outside of the executive, although I'm happy to take away ideas. John.
And again, I'd say that Councillor Moore was suggesting whether the portfolio holder would consider recommending within his recommendation to full council when this comes up, whether that would be a possibility.
And that's what we'll ask him to do at the end, John,
yeah.
to make sure he needs to talk to the officers, to make sure it's all legit and all within the bounds of possibility, and we do it in an organised way. But let Councillor Jobson come in and then we'll deal with it. Sorry, Martin, it's just trying to keep straight and narrow here. Councillor Jobson.
Thank you. I welcome the report, but there is, I'm afraid, just a somewhat picky but I think important amendment to it, and that is about the Exeter St James, because it wasn't the community association, because of course a corporate body had to be created to allow the asset transfer to take place, and so it's the Exeter St James Community Trust Limited who actually got the benefit of the asset transfer. And I think it's important because it does need to be a corporate body for asset transfers, and the way it's worded here, it looks like it could just be an association without that extra bit. So otherwise I welcome the report.
Okay, and the same sort of principle, John, that we need to make sure, and then Martin can report back to full council when this comes forward, because again, if that's what it is, that's what it is. So I saw JP, you're wanting to say something on
Just
this.
to say, Chair, regarding the first point, I don't think there's any issues with it in terms of the amendment, because it just lists organisations such as, so it names a few types of those organisations, so it's not including or excluding anything. So I don't think that would be a problem. But with the second one regarding the trust, yes, it's really important we get that correct.
Well, I'm going to ask Councillor Pearce to take that away, to look into that, to bring forward. Are you happy to do that, Martin?
Yeah, sure, Chair. I think it's the key point really is what JP's just said there. That's a list that is neither inclusive nor exclusive. I don't think the organisation type that Councillor Moore was proposing is excluded from the policy or from potentially accessing it and using it to take over ownership of an asset through this transfer. So, but we can look at that if it's really, vital for the wording. Sure. And
Okay.
thank you, Councillor Jobson, for your point of clarification on the accuracy there. Important.
So all I would say before I go into the debate to any member, if you see something in a report that is perhaps grammatically incorrect or perhaps not referenced correctly, a quick email before to put things right would help us a little bit, if you see what I mean. You don't necessarily have to wait until now, but we would acknowledge it at this moment that we would be putting it right. Let's everybody give them time to make sure we're doing the right thing. So I'm going to open it up for discussion. I think I saw Councillor Williams. Councillor Williams.
Thank you, Chair. It's just a question about safeguarding the asset. We've already have mentioned the St James Community Trust, I think it was called, wasn't it? Limited. I know a few of the members of that particular group, lots of very, very enthusiastic, committed, older members of the community. And so I just wondered what happens if something happens, a number of those members move away, some of them will pass away, and so we might be left with a situation that that group can no longer maintain the asset. So what happens in those sorts of situations?
Okay, thank you. We'll pick that up at the end, Councillor. Do we have anybody else on this point? No? Well, we are at the end, so we'll pick it up now. Dawn, JP or Martin, who wants to give us a bit of technical advice here on what happens if an organisation with a community asset ends up becoming defunct, basically. What happens? Dawn.
Thank you for that question. I think we tried to address that on number 10 within the report, where we talked about the risks, and we very much recognise that that potentially might be a risk. And here, that's why there is a recommendation that if the property was transferred through a leasehold basis rather than a freehold transfer, then that would provide some cover for the council to be having an ongoing relationship and partnership with the group where the transfer was being made, so that we could look at monitoring to some extent along with members from that community with what was happening, and then be part of negotiations about if there needs to be changes made and then potentially a break in contract.
If I can just add, Chair, so it will be during the proposal, I think we just need to ensure that that level of due diligence takes place in terms of the robustness of the group. So elected members will look at each individual application. I think that's a really important point in terms of making sure that it stands up to scrutiny when it goes through.
Thank you. Councillor Pearce, do you want to pull this item to conclusion?
Yeah, thank you. And I'd just really like to expand a little bit on the technical points that have been made by the officers there, really, that this is a framework for the whole process, but each individual item will be looked at and each organisation addressed on its merits. So an organisation that comes forward with 50 members that's been running for 25 years would be looked at very differently to an organisation which has just come together for a particular one issue focus, and the risks are obviously different with different organisations, so it's a case-by-case basis based within this framework. So really I'd just like to thank the officers for the time and the effort that they put into bringing this together, just as a way of, I think it's been alluded to by several people already, just formalising what we're already doing here in supporting community groups in the city. So thank you for your time, and thank you to the other councillors who've contributed to this small discussion. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So before I move the recommendation, just to add some clarity, that the portfolio order will take those issues away. We are happy to have that. I'll speak to John how we make sure we technically amend something or whatever, because we're amending the document as opposed to the recommendation as such, but we'll have that chat, and that's all I want to make sure everything's done correctly. But as for that organisation, Councillor Jobson, of course, and the same with you, Councillor Moore, we take it all on board. So all those in favour of the recommendation, please show.
It's a unanimous vote, Chair. That has been carried.
Thank you. We now move on to item 9, which is Food Law and Health and Safety Enforcement Service Plan 22-23. Here we have two recommendations, which is A and B. So Simon, I think you're telling us all about this one.
Thank you, Chair. This is my 12th edition of the Food Law and Health and Safety Service Plan. What I would start off by saying is this team and their work has been massively thrown up in the air over the last 2 years, because it was them who were helping National Track and Trace with people that had fallen off the radar and needed tracking, going into businesses and checking COVID compliance with the various regulations that came out over a 2-year period. And obviously we had significant periods over that 2 years where food inspections could not take place because by law businesses were shut. So what this plan in particular sets out is the recovery mechanism, and we are following a national framework set down by the Food Standards Agency mainly, but also the Health and Safety Executive, which we are in a very good position with regard to, because we did do food hygiene inspections when we could. But also the work of this team is not only around food and health and safety, it's around infection control, accident investigations, and things like that, and they do nuisance aspects. The last point that I would make is that I've lost my train of thought there. That obviously there are actually 150 more food businesses in the city today than there were actually when I reported before the pandemic. So it just shows the change in nature. Now that is an ever-changing feat, but what that demand is having an impact on is a very small team's work resource, and we are absorbing that with the resources that we've got available to us. A lot of businesses are coming and going, and obviously we may put resources into inspecting a business, and sadly they may not be there for very long, but obviously we still have to do our legal duties with this regard. Happy to take any questions, Chair.
Okay, thank you. And just to say, Simon, I think we all, again, as we did with Bindu's team, again, I think it's greatly appreciated the additional work that many of the staff are doing, going over and beyond. It's really appreciated, and that was an interesting stat, what you said there about food businesses in Exeter. I haven't had time to visit them all, by the way, but I'm working my way through them. So, if anybody now to ask the two leaders whether or not the leaders want to come in on this? No? Okay, I'll throw it open for discussion. Councillor Wright.
Thanks, Chair. I found this really, really useful. Actually, just want to say thank you for putting in the structure of the Environmental Health and Community Safety team and all those great bits of info which really help you to see how many people are working on what. But we don't always get to know that at member level. So that was really useful and helpful. Thank you. I know that's not exactly part of the report in a way, but it was good. I've just got a question about changes that may be made by the service lead, which is in recommendation 2. I'm presuming that any changes that would have to be made due to new legislation or whatever, you'd be able to make them, but you would advise perhaps would it go through the licensing committee, or how would we know that the plan has been changed or amended? That is the same thing.
So there's two bits to that. If there is a piece of legislation, then it is likely to require a change to the Constitution to update constitutional powers. So therefore there's a report that accompanies that aspect. Where I'd say this has been crucial is during COVID, there was absolutely no time for me or the team to come back with committee reports. We had to get on with the job, because quite literally you had the government standing up at 8 o'clock in the evening, and you'd got new legislation following thereafter. But a lot of that was under statutory instrument, and the primary legislation was already within the Constitution. So that's where we have to be flexible and have that dynamic approach, because it's sort of all hands to the deck. But ordinarily, if there's a new piece of food hygiene law, and it was primary legislation, then that's when you would hear about it through a report to change the Constitution.
Thank you, Simon. Is there any other contributions? So we have the two recommendations, A and B. I'm going to put it to the vote. All those in favour?
That's unanimous vote, Chair. The recommendations have been carried.
Thank you, Mark. So I'll move on now to item 10. Which is the Air Quality Annual Status Report. And we've got one recommendation here, is that we note the Annual Status Report, and we recommend that Council also notes the Annual Status Report. Simon?
Chair, I'm not going to go through the report, but what I will highlight members to is the appraisal that has been given by the Department of Environment, Food and Rural Affairs that has been attached as an appendix to this report. And in particular, I would draw people to the commentary where there are 5 points that DEFRA have made. And in all the years that I have been presenting this report, I have never had the luxury of such a glowing appraisal from DEFRA. So I'd like to pay credit to the 2 staff in particular that put a lot of work in, and it is a fraction of their jobs because they do a lot of other things. But to have DEFRA saying that this report has been completed to a high standard with accuracy of data presented and the discussion included in the report welcomed, robust and accurate quality assurance and quality control procedures were applied, calculation for bias adjustment and annualisation factors were outlined in detail, the Council has included discussion and review of its air quality management areas and monitoring strategy, informed due to the monitoring network and also the air quality action plan measures. This demonstrates the Council's proactive approach to ensuring good air quality across the district. Councils have provided very clear and detailed maps of the diffusion tube monitoring network. This is welcomed. Trends are presented and discussed, and a robust comparison to air quality objectives is provided. And lastly, overall the report is detailed, concise, and satisfies the criteria of relevant standards. The Council should continue their good and thorough work.
Indeed they will. Thank you, Simon, and I think that was well said. So I'll ask any of the oppositions. Councillor Jobson? No? Councillor Moore?
Thank you very much, and thank you for this report. It's really important that we see what's happening with air pollution in the city. So what I would like to ask about is the actions, because these are listed from page 119, but we don't see the proportion or the evidence which underpins to what extent the relevant action makes towards improving air quality. So this, I would welcome further examination. We don't have figures to say the number of proportion of people walking and cycling, for example, and the difference that's making in terms of air pollution. So, and if you look at through all the actions, we could have greater analysis on that. And I am concerned that air pollution is on the rise again because we can see that in the charts, which are really, really helpful to see that. So it's really great to see information presented in that way. But I would also be interested because we often hear that the City Council is unable to act. It's our job just to monitor this data. So I wondered if the portfolio holder might be minded to send this to Devon County Council and ask for their response to the report and the effectiveness of the actions and what they're doing to contribute towards improving air quality in the city. Thank you.
Okay, so we'll deal with that at the end, and I'll ask Simon to come in at the end about some of that. Do we have any other contributions from the members? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Councillor Moore has actually taken one of the comments that I make on an annual basis when this report comes out. The first thing is that it's produced to certain criteria that are required by the report because it's a statutory report, but also that our role is to measure and report. Whilst we as a council embrace the challenge and we work with the county and with any partners to look at how we can improve the air quality, we need to be mindful of the resources that we have as a council, which are quite limited and ever under pressure. We do what we can to work with partners to improve air quality, but this particular report is to be noted. It's a report we are making on air quality. It's not about the actions, although very much backed that those actions need to be taken and we need to work with whoever we can to improve it. Those are the comments I usually make every year when this comes out, because otherwise I think we let off those partners who are actually directly responsible for
factors that can change the air quality significantly, such as transport, which falls under Devon County Council, but we will be talking to them. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wood, thank you. Councillor Morse and then Councillor Williams.
Simon Lane knows that every time we get this report I take the mickey out of him and say it's a really difficult report to read and it's not the most exciting thing in the world, and I'm very mean to him about it. But actually I would like to give him credit for the fact that it actually is a quite interesting read, and that there are a lot of extra documents, but it is really interesting. And what I do know is that the man that turns up in a city council electric car periodically and takes something off the lamppost outside my house is going to DT44, and it's monitoring Beacon Heath's air pollution levels, which incidentally are quite low comparative to the rest of the city. So I'm quite excited to discover that, considering it's quite a busy road. But just to say thank you for what actually is quite a readable report, and I'm sorry that I wind you up every year about it.
Okay, thank you. Councillor Wood.
I'd just like to echo what Councillor Morse has said, and I'm particularly pleased to see all the pretty graphs, which is so helpful rather than having lots and lots of tables. So well done to everyone involved, and it's certainly a lot more readable this year than it has been, and I love numbers, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else? So Simon, in coming back, I'd like you just to address is where does this report go? Does it sit on a shelf somewhere, or does it get sent somewhere? That's what I need to know.
Thank you, Chair. Actually, this year, the government did change where the report went to. So as part of the criteria before we submitted the report, we had to fill in a box to say that we had actually shared it with the Director of Public Health at Devon County Council. So I did duly share that with him, and he has digested it. He's probably got to digest the other 8 local authorities in Devon as well, to be fair to him. But I know he certainly read it, and he came back to me with comments. In terms of wider stuff, with respect to this report, then obviously we are building up to the Air Quality Action Plan does need to be refreshed. We have an anomaly in that refresh in terms of the data for 2020 is pretty much discounted because it was a very abnormal year, and we are looking at the next couple of years will inform that process of the Air Quality Action Plan and how big whether we change our air quality management area, because there's a significant number of locations within that. There's 50 locations in the air quality management area. 49 of them at the moment are below the legal objective.
Okay, thank you, Simon. I will ensure that a conversation takes place between a portfolio holder and yourself about some of these things. I see this as a very good tick list as to what we need to be doing, and I'll make sure that conversation, which I feel takes place anyway. So there's the recommendation that we note the report. All those in favour?
That's unanimous vote. That recommendation has been carried.
Thank you. So if we can now go on to item 11, which is the Northbrook Wild Arboretum project initiation and funding. This would normally fall under Councillor Gypsies, but there are 2 recommendations here that we approve in principle the stages required to develop the Northbrook Wild Arboretum in partnership with the Devon Wildlife Trust, and recommend to the Council an allocation of £288,583 towards a project made up to £222,615 from a mixture of community infrastructure levy funding, or 106 if available, and contributions of £65,000, well nearly £66,000 from partners. And David, is this you? Tell me all about the...
It is indeed. Thank you, Chair.
Great idea, by the way.
So you'll already, this is the third time this has come to the exec, so you'll remember that we did a public consultation and we got 96% support for this concept of a wild arboretum, so it's really, really well supported. So this is just kind of the next stage report that sets out the steps required to deliver the project, and we have been working hard with the Wildlife Trust, with our own parks and engineering teams, and also with the County Council on the green transport aspects of this to develop the project further. We also hope to be working with the Environment Agency to further develop the project, and we are in discussions with them to for an additional contribution, but it's early days on that yet. So it's relatively straightforward. You've seen the recommendations. I think this is a great project, and I think it's a really important green link. So I'm very happy to take any questions.
Okay, thank you. Before we go into that, David, I'm going to ask the opposition leaders. Councillor Moore, is there anything you want to say?
I welcome it.
Good. Councillor Jobson?
I welcome it as well. Just wanting to check if it's the 85% or the 50%.
Yes, it is. Yeah. It will be from the 85%, correct, yeah. And okay, I'll open this up for discussion. Anybody like to, Councillor Wright, then Councillor Word, and then Councillor Parkinson.
Thank you, Chair. Just wanted to support this and support work that's being done. When we're talking about air quality, and we're looking at how we're monitoring air quality and what are we doing towards trying to keep air quality good. What we're doing here is keeping hold of one massive expanse of green land, which is one of the lungs of the city, if you like, and a decision was made by this council and this leader a while ago not to sell it off for development and land, which we could have done and we were under pressure to do in some ways, and from some direction. So I'm just so pleased that we sort of resisted that, and that place is still there, because it is absolutely beautiful and it's very peaceful and it's very good for your soul and your mind and obviously your lungs. I do have a bit of a question though, please, if that's all right, for David, which is, could you just confirm, it mentions about the car park and the building remaining with the maintenance or control of ECC, but I think a bit later on it was looking like that might move. Is that going to stay within our remit to look after that car park and the building, which I can see has been vandalised according to the report, which is such a shame?
If you could answer that quickly, David.
Yeah, so we're exploring the long-term future of that building with the Wildlife Trust. So this is really just about the proposal for the green space. It does include some short-term uses for the building. We would look to transfer that as part of a lease agreement, and we normally do forward pairing leases. That is still to be decided yet, but we will definitely look at that in the future. The car park is more than likely will stay with us. It's relatively easy to maintain, and there's some significant surface water infrastructure in there as well, so I think we can keep that on. The maintenance of the green space would obviously go to the Wildlife Trust, and we would like to include that in the existing lease with the Wildlife Trust. That's again part of the future discussions.
Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. This type of work was mentioned earlier in the asset transfer discussion, and this is another example where one of our green spaces will be transferred to Devon Wildlife Trust and protected. I've changed hats since this last came to committees, and I'm now climate change lead. And this really is the background to why there is a difference between Zero 2030 and climate change. This embraces biodiversity. This is about the environment, and this is what we're meant to be kind of building in the background. Yes, we have to cut down emissions, definitely, but one of the ways that you cut down emissions is by capturing it, by carbon offsetting, and we will be planting a lot of trees. Obviously that contributes to that, but it also encourages active travel. If you transfer from a car to a bicycle, you will enjoy your commute through this much more than you will be stuck in Topsham Road traffic jam. So it hits both of those, but apart from anything else, I think that it's really important that we recognise that this could have gone in a different direction. This could have been built on. It's not, it's being protected. More than that, it's being enhanced. And that the protection and increasing that biodiversity, planting trees, is all good stuff. It's all in line with what I hope to achieve within my portfolio. So thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Parkhouse.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, just to echo what Duncan said, really. This is the first time I've seen this as an executive member, so really excited to see some of this hard work that's gone into it, and it sounds like just such a great project. In terms of physical activity, our physical activity goals within the city, I think this is really going to help people meet their physical activity, goals through the pedestrianising and improved cycle routes, as well as accessibility, so benches for people if they want to take a break or have disabilities, and dog bins for people who walk their dogs there, and cycle racks. So I think it ticks all the boxes when it comes to physical activity and increasing physical activity within the city, so I really welcome this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor. Anybody else? Just bringing it to an end, and before we go into the vote, just number 13, are there any other options? Well, there were at the time, but we chose not to follow them. And what I'm pleased about this is that there has been consultation. We were asked many questions. Are you going to consult? Who are you going to consult with? Will you consult with the community? And I said, we will. We will. And we have. And I'm so pleased that the proposals to enhance it has been warmly supported, as the report says, and that's been done. And it does say at the end, the council committed some time ago that this would remain a public green space and one which will contribute towards a number of our corporate goals. We've kept to our promises, and that is costing over $250,000 more. So we do put our money where our mouths are when we say these things, and I'm so pleased, and it is. I cycle through there, go through there quite regularly, and it is a nice place. Nice to go through there without a fear of a golf ball coming towards me anymore. So I'll put that to the executive. All those in favour of the recommendations, please show.
That's unanimous vote, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Carried.
Nice to have some good news. Number 12, all good news. Exeter Plan outline draft consultation. Councillor Morse, can you read your two recommendations, please?
Okay, the recommendations are that the Executive approves the outline draft Exeter Plan, content included in Appendix A, as the basis for public consultation for 8 weeks during 8 weeks commencing on the 26th of September 2022, and that the Executive gives delegated authority to the Director of City Development in consultation with the Council Leader and Portfolio Holder for City Development to agree minor changes to the outline draft plan content before it is published for consultation.
Thank you. And I'm going to ask the Director of City Development in Coniston, and I know we've got George here as well to come in on some detail. You've got something to show us, haven't you?
Thank you, Chair. Here we are. Does this work? Yes. So, the new Exeter Plan is finally arrived. It's been 10 years in the making. So it's been 10 years since we published a plan like this for Exeter. So it's a big moment for all of us, for the whole city, and it is good news. It is something to celebrate. I'm so pleased that this is ready now as a draft for consultation. It's groundbreaking, really, when you think of it, that it is 10 years since we had a plan. But it looks ahead to the next 20 years, to 2040. And so it will be that blueprint that shapes all of our futures. This first draft is ready for consultation, and the emphasis is very much on engagement now. That's our focus for the next few months, really, as we reach out to our communities and hopefully engage them in the planning of their own city. And that's what this next phase is all about. The council promised this last year when it published its local development scheme, so we've delivered on that promise. This is ready now. It's a coherent plan, as we'll explain in this presentation, and it's a new local plan for Exeter. It's new in a number of different ways. First thing to say is that we're going to publish this plan digitally online. That's the first time we've ever done this in Exeter, and it follows government best practice and guidance that many other local authorities have followed. Uploading it digitally onto a platform means that it's going to be much more accessible to communities and people that may otherwise not have been interested in planning. And it's making it available so that they can access it on their mobile devices. So I know that's going to be pleasing for a younger population in particular. But it also means that it's accessible wherever you are, and you can literally go into the plan and look at any section of it of your choice and look at it. The format will allow you to comment, provide information that we can use in shaping the next phase of the plan. So it's really important. And this is really part of our broader approach. We wanted to engage our communities. This plan will touch the lives of everybody that lives and works and studies and visits Exeter. So it's so important that we try and involve the whole section of our community in the planning of their city, and that's what we aim to do. And as I keep saying, and I won't stop saying this, because I'm really proud of this, we are doing things differently. We're not happy just to sit back and do the tried and tested ways of consulting. We will reach out in person. We'll be doing lots of events across the city. Just agreed to do an event down in the Keys, for example, for our communities in St David's. And we'll be doing lots more of that. We're working out a plan how we're going to do that face-to-face contact. Hard copy will be available, of course, and we'll be doing exhibitions and in-person events. But we want to do things differently as well. Those tried and tested methods are really important, but we know from experience that the kind of responses that we get are quite limited. Doing things like the RAM exhibition, which I hope everybody's been to see now, and had a go at that. This is the sort of example that we're setting ourselves for the future, because this really does involve the wider section of the community. Whenever I've been to the exhibition, I've visited it a few times now. I've even had a little go at the Lego myself. It's always been packed with young people, with children, with mothers and fathers, with older people, grandparents. I couldn't imagine a time when I was planning in my early career having that number of people, and that type of people, even bothering to look and be interested. And this is just the way we want to go. And there's lots of other examples of this, and we're going to be working really hard, not just over the next couple of months, over the next couple of years, as we develop the plan and build our involvement with all of our communities. So this is a unique approach that we've adopted for our plan as well, and I can say this in total confidence. I've not seen another statutory local plan anywhere in the country that's brought together the vision for the place
in the way that we've done here. So our 2040 vision, your vision 2040 that the council adopted in 2019 is now embedded in this draft plan. And it's not just embedded, the outcomes of that vision, there are 7 key outcomes of our vision. They're the golden threads now that will link and drive the whole plan. So every policy that's going to be in the plan will have a link back to one of those outcomes, and to demonstrate that ultimately what the plan is seeking to achieve is to deliver on that 2040 vision. Of course, this is a statutory legal document, or it will be when it's adopted, and that's really important. We're calling it the Exeter Plan. It is really a local plan, but it's the Exeter Plan because it's our plan. It's our city plan. It will be the main policy document that we have, and it will set out that future direction, and George will explain some of the components of that statutory legal aspect in a moment. Eventually, it'll replace all of our existing planning policies, including the core strategy and the local plan. Those policies are saved, by the way, so they're still relevant. We still use them on a daily basis, of course, to make planning decisions, and that'll be the case until our new plan is adopted. The other thing to say is this early version of the plan, we wanted to get this early version out as promised this month, because we wanted to give everybody the full chance to have a say and have a look at it before it's developed in any more detail. It is a coherent plan, but it's not complete. But I think that's important, that we give people a chance. So this is not a done deal, and there'll be lots of opportunities for people to shape it, and that's why we want to get people involved, to consult and to engage and shape it, because it is their future. So you've heard me say this a number of times now. So we have a vision now, and that vision is your vision, and it's embedded in the plan. This is the first time now that we've created a strategy and published it to implement that vision. This strategy that's now in our draft plan very much focuses the majority of the development on brownfield land. Strategic brownfield sites, as you can see on that plan, that are close to the city centre, close to transport routes and hubs, and have good access to green infrastructure like Northbrook Park and the Valley Parks. And the reason for that, the main reason for that, is that's the most sustainable way to develop. That's the way we'll tackle the climate emergency, zero carbon, and all our other vision outcomes and objectives, is through developing within our city on those previously developed sites to optimise development and make sure that we tackle all of those wide-ranging strategic issues. Of course, we need to deliver the infrastructure that goes with that, and that in itself will support higher quality development. So to deliver that strategy, the council invented Livable Exeter before my time. It was a bold initiative when it was launched. Again, 12,000 homes to be built on the brownfield sites, which optimises those densities. So now that we've got that strategy in place, we can build on that and we can strengthen it. It is the brilliant alternative to building on our green spaces, but we need some further detail and some principles in which to sort of strengthen that and reinvigorate that idea. So behind the scenes, we've been working really hard. The team that George leads has been working really hard. We've developed these principles now. This is the first time we've been able to publish these principles. These are high-level principles that I would expect will wash across all our development sites going forward. And you'll see these imprinted in hopefully the outcomes, the things that come out of the ground in these new communities. They're all really important principles and weave back into that fabric that we want to create, because this is about communities. It's not just about building homes. That's really important, of course, but this is about building place, neighbourhoods and communities. These principles we will develop further. There's an aspiration, I've got a strong ambition to develop this again in another groundbreaking way. We'll be looking at potentially strategic design codes, more detailed plans for specific areas that build on these broad principles. So it's a really exciting moment for us. So I'm going to hand over to George now. He's going to take you through the more detailed parts of the plan for you to consider, and then we'll take our questions.
Thanks, Ian. So a few more elements of this description of the detailed content of the outline draft, and this slide explains that. Ian's set out already that we have an existing vision for the city, and that's embedded in the outline draft. We've also set out that we have a spatial strategy for the document. I don't know how many times Ian said we're doing things differently, but one thing that we are doing differently is a key element of the spatial strategy, which is a real brownfield focus. We have had that in the past, but we've had, I suppose, a more balanced strategy. But this time we really are focusing on the brownfield developments within the city, and that's a challenge, but that's a real opportunity as well, and that is a key difference, I think. We've set out an initial set of policies, draft policies for the plan. It's not the full raft of policies, but it's a good first number. A lot of them quite strategic. There will be more detailed policies to follow in future. And then we've also set out a list of potential development sites which have gone through an awful lot of assessment, and these are the sites which we think are those which would help us meet our development needs going forward. I'll come on to those in a moment. All of this is underpinned by an awful lot of evidence. And this is where we come on to the more statutory element of the plan making process. This list here is not, is I suppose a snapshot of what we have in terms of our evidence base. It's not exhaustive, but we have set out a housing needs assessment, an employment study, a large number of studies looking at sites and assessing the potential for development on those sites. We've done a housing, employment, land availability assessment. Then we've also got some work which is ongoing. We have a Gypsy and traveller accommodation assessment and a playing pitch strategy, both which are ongoing currently. So there's an awful lot of evidence behind the document which we will put out for consultation. There are also these are statutory appraisals that we have to do to accompany the plan as it progresses, one being the sustainability appraisal, which kind of does what it says on the tin. It looks at all of the key content of the plan, so the policies, the sites, the vision, and assesses the sustainability of each of those elements. And then we also have to do a habitat regulations assessment, which looks at the content of the plan in the context of potential impacts on European designated habitats in the area, so the estuary in Exeter's case predominantly. So the key message is an awful lot of evidence, and that will be made available as part of the consultation come the end of the month. Policies. The plan, this slide shows the chapters or sections or parts of the plan, and there will be a series of policies set out within each of these elements. I won't go through all of these in detail, but we have a section on homes, as you would expect, a section on the economy, a section on climate change, and the various other elements. We also have probably a little bit more than we have had in the past on health and well-being, and that will develop as we move forwards, and also on culture and heritage. So we're looking to embed those in the plan, perhaps more than we have done in the past. So there will be a section on each theme and a series of policies attached to each theme. So development sites is a key element of the plan. So this is where we set out how we envisage meeting our development needs, in particular housing. I'll have a couple of slides in a moment which explains that and illustrates that. We have a series and a variety of sites. We have mixed use, larger sites, predominantly brownfield, which are those that have been articulated previously through the Livable Exeter initiative, which Ian has mentioned. And we also have, for balance, a series of smaller, predominantly residential sites. I've mentioned the spatial strategy already, and the fact that the vast majority of the development, according to this draft, would be met on brownfield land. So of the sites or the numbers of homes that we are looking to allocate through this plan, 85% of those homes would be provided on brownfield land, which is a real change in emphasis. And a real opportunity in something which I think that is probably a unique position of the councils certainly in the Devon area. So a real opportunity there to look at brownfield development in a really proactive way. We have sites come from various sources. I've mentioned Livable Exeter already. We have a series of smaller council-owned sites which we've assessed and have set out for consultation, but also a series of others which have been promoted and proposed by third parties. So as part of the process, we invited the industry and landowners to propose sites which they felt had some merit, and we've assessed those through our evidence process. Ian also mentioned our existing plans and the fact that the policies within those plans are saved for the period until the new plan is adopted. And so there is a small number of sites which are already allocated. There are our existing allocations that haven't been built out as yet. And so we're looking at including those in the document as well. So together, the sites provide for approximately 6,200 homes to 2040. We also have existing consents and potential windfall developments which we can include as well to meet our housing needs. And as I said, all the sites that we've proposing for consultation have been assessed through an extremely laborious process. In terms of where the sites are, this plan shows on a citywide level the location of the sites. So the blue sites are the Livable Exeter larger mixed use sites, and the yellow sites are the smaller predominantly residential sites that will be included for consultation. In list form, that looks like this. So these are the larger sites. If you were to compare the numbers attached to these sites listed here and their overall capacity, there would be a difference. So we're recognising that we won't necessarily build out all of the Livable Exeter sites in the period up to 2040. So we're not being over reliant on this small number of sites building out completely, because we understand and acknowledge there are challenges attached to them. But you can see from the numbers here that there are some fairly large scale developments, mixed use developments, which we are consulting on. Then we have, for some variety, we have a series of generally smaller, predominantly residential sites. These range from quite large existing allocations to much smaller sites which have come forward for consideration, and this will help us have a variety in our pipeline of development sites going forward, mindful of our need to ensure supply on an even basis throughout the plan period. So there's a series of generally smaller sites that we're consulting on here for housing. In terms of the process and the consultation and engagement that we're planning to undertake, Ian's already spoken about the fact that we're launching a brand new interactive platform called Commonplace, which will be the home of the consultation in its digital sense. So we're doing a lot of work behind the scenes to set this up, and the key to this is trying to engage more readily with a wider proportion of the public. So we'll be doing that digitally, but we also recognise that digital isn't the only means of consulting. We need a variety of methods, and so we will be having exhibitions, we will be providing hard copies of consultation materials in various public places, including libraries, for example, and the Civic Centre reception, and possibly other places. So we're trying to cover both bases, but we are doing things very differently in terms of the digital format of the consultation. So what happens next? Hopefully, consultation between the 26th of September and 21st of November, subject to approval. The responses will be used to continue preparing the plan, and we will consult again next year. We will need to do at least one further consultation, perhaps more, and then there will be an examination of the plan to ensure its robustness. And at that stage, we get to a point where we have an adoptable plan. So I think the message is we'll be doing a lot of consultation this autumn, but we'll be doing more consultation, at least one further phase, if not two, in advance of examination. So an awful lot of opportunity to influence the plan going forward. I think that concludes the slides. So I think Ian and I have to take questions. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you for that. A very comprehensive and a subject that we needed to spend a bit of time on, by the way. That we needed to spend a bit of time on that, and thank you, George and Ian, for that. So before I open it up to the floor, Councillor Jobson.
Thank you. I'd just like to thank you for all the hard work you put into that and for a very interesting presentation. How soon will we get the list of, I'll call it roadshow, dates and venues, so that we can start publicising them to local residents?
Okay, we'll come back to that later on. Councillor Moore.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes, good presentation, and a huge amount of work goes into this, so it's pleasing to see it at this stage. I've just a few comments, if that's okay. Interesting to see the list of evidence base for community facility, evidence base. Will there be some work done around the need for community facilities and also health services? A question from Councillor Mitchell, who sent his apologies, but we'd very much like to know about the contribution of the university, which makes a huge contribution to the city, and I understand that they are developing a new master plan. So will that inform or become part of the new plan, and when will that be publicly consulted on?
Okay, thank you. I'll leave you to deal with that.
A couple more points, if that's okay.
Yeah, well, yeah. Come on then.
Thank you, Councillor. So it's very interesting to hear earlier the discussion about the Liverpool Exeter Place Board, which has been so prominently mentioned in the document and informing this. And it would be really great if there could be co-creative input from community organisations that are either place-based or of interest, because they're not represented on the Place Board. So maybe the leader might agree with me that perhaps a community panel could be set up to contribute to the strategic direction of the city. And I was just also wanted to comment that I was pleased to see that there was work being done around Gypsies and Travellers, because it's really important that we include their needs in a realistic way in the plan. Thank you.
Okay, I'll throw it open for discussion. Remember, we're not doing the consultation now. We're just, You see the recommendation, we're just receiving the report, and then it'll go out to consultation. I know we've all got a lot to say, but that is the area. So Councillor Wright.
Thank you, Chair. Firstly, to echo what other people said, well done, this is an amazing piece of work, and yes, it has taken 10 years and we've been waiting a long time to get the local plan, so we're really, really pleased to see this all being in a draft form at the moment. So good work for everybody, from everyone involved. I'm particularly pleased to see 5.1 in the report that states there are no additional financial implications for us to consider in this report. That's unusual, and that's very welcome. So you're not going to be asking for any extra money, which is tip top. Excellent. I'll just see. Okay. I've got a couple of questions, if I may, Chair. George, you mentioned that there will be a Gypsy and Travellers policy strategy that will go alongside this, but it was my sort of belief that this should actually be part of the local plan to have it referenced in there about a designated space for Gypsy and Traveller communities. So I wanted just to pick up on that. It could be perhaps under Principle 6, which is about the spaces for people. And I would also just got a query about how the Gypsy and Traveller communities, because it's obviously it's very difficult because they're transient, many different communities. How will they be alerted to this consultation and be invited to take part? Because it does say so in the Equalities impact assessment that, of course, that Gypsy and Traveller communities must be consulted or included in all of this, and that's all quite relevant at the moment because we've had a lot of travelling people. David's smiling and nodding because you've had to deal with it a lot, and a lot of people are saying we should have that provision there within our local plan with what we're thinking about within the city.
That will come out, obviously, but just to say, I do believe there are a national organisation representing Gypsies and Travellers who I feel sure that we will contact. There are organisations that represent them, and I would assume they would have their channels down to the very people who came into one of those spots, I would hope. So I would have hoped they will, and so I'd say, and we will make sure that we get those people involved. Have we got any more contributions? Councillor Wood.
Thank you, Chair. Just really pleased to see this document coming to fruition now after 10 years. Obviously, as a ward councillor, I represent Pinhoe, which is seeing quite an impact of the current development, including losing some of its Green Ridge line. So it will be great to see this come on board. What I'm really pleased to see is that it's brownfield first strategy, and that there is an intention to protect the Green Ridge line, which you know is great news. In my role as climate change, I think it's really worth noting the climate change element, sustainable transport and communications element, and also natural environment element to this consultation and this document. And I would really recommend that everybody reads that. When it comes out, that's something I'm going to be encouraging everybody to have a look at, because there is a lot of thought gone into this. But it's not to say it's perfect, and that's why there's a consultation. So I'm going to be reaching out as far as I can as a local councillor, and I hope everybody else will, to reach my residents to say, come and have a look at it. If you like it, great. If it's got something missing, please let us know.
Thank you.
Thank you. Great job.
Anybody else? Okay, just before I'm going to bring the portfolio holder in now, and then perhaps I'll ask Ian on some of those points that were raised. Just to say, I keep looking at this. There's a lot of, it's a bit like the question we had earlier, a lot of thing about the Liverpool board, and what the Liverpool board will do. Well, the Liverpool board will do no more than what they're asked to do, and they won't be making no decisions. I think 2.1.2 of the report says that is absolutely no decisions that they're taking whatsoever. As to engagement with the university, that's in delivering the vision. It talks about we're working closely with its delivery partners. and there's a number of bullet points in 217 on how we're talking. So I just feel confident that we will bring all these things together, and if there are groups and organisations that we are missing, I think we will make sure. But I even hear there are groups forming just to make a response to this. Well, all I would say to everybody now is, whether you're one person or in a group or a number of groups, if you are making an individual submission, it is no less important than somebody who is saying, I speak on behalf of 555 other people in 25 organisations. If there is a good idea in there, I would hope that we would follow that good idea. So I'm just trying to assure people that from what I hear, and if I had £1 for every time Ian said consultation, we would not have a council deficit to talk of. I mean, every time he said that, we would be all right. I'm feeling quite relaxed and confident that the team will be, and we will hear if somebody says, what about me? You know, well, tell us and we will talk to you. We're going to reach as many people as we can. That's all I would want to say from listening to stuff. Because I detected some anxiety about that. We just won't be reaching out to everybody. So Councillor Morse, to finish off the discussion, please.
I have £1 for every time he says Lego, and I'll be nearly as rich as you are. Here we go. Sort of 18 months, 2 years ago, Cream and Phil pulled me into their office and said, do you want to take on the planning portfolio? And they said, because we want you to deliver a local plan. And I went, yeah, we can do that. And then never thought we'd hit any of the deadlines we've hit so far, and I'll touch wood that we continue doing it. But I just, considering some of the other things that have been thrown at us in the meantime, and there's a lot going on, we have managed to keep focus with the local plan, and all credit to George particularly for keeping his head down and just keep planning forward, so that we are going out to consultation at the end of September, like we told you to when we brought those dates to you. You know, hold me to account if we don't manage it every time, but at least I've hit one of those targets through all of that. So I would like to just say to the whole team and everyone who's been involved along the way, including Bindu and various other officers that have come and gone, I'm very grateful that we are sat here with the first draft of something, and it is the first draft, so there's no need to pick at it now. What we're asking you to is pick at it in the consultation, so it becomes the second draft of something, and that those changes can be made, and everyone is welcome to engage with this. And I very much hope that we are, that we will be able to get into high schools to get younger people invested in it, because otherwise I'm not building anything for my kids, essentially, or looking at what my grandkids might need, because this is a flipping long plan and we'll need to look forward. On the 10-year thing, I think it's an accurate statement, but I just want to point out local plans are designed to last a long time. So it's not like we just haven't been asked. It's that they're meant to last that long time, and nobody talks about the guest years, but they existed too, and we worked on something else for a very long time that fell through. So yes, we are a bit behind with this, but nobody's been sat twiddling their thumbs. We all thought we'd be developing a different document that doesn't exist. So that's sort of in defence of the 10-year jump. There has been legislation change on Gypsies and Travellers in the last couple of years, and that's why we're on a back foot a bit with that. But there are those sort of organisations. I worked in the east of England and South Cambridgeshire, where there is a massive Gypsy population. They do exist, the Travellers, and those conversations will be able to be had. It's not something that we'll be ignoring, but we are working with new legislation, and the new crime bill brought in that legislation to move people on as well. So that's all wrapped up in each other. With relation to the work put into this, I don't have to deal with a lot of this, I really don't, but the joke that we all laughed at about the HELAR group, I went to the first half of that and it lasted 5.5 hours, and it was just people talking about sites, and I have to give much credit to George and his team, who not only draft all those documents, listen to everybody's feedback, and then turn them into something that's sat in front of you that is ridiculously readable. And sitting through that meeting, it wasn't. It was It was painful, I think is the description for it. And sometimes to get things right, things are painful and they are hard work and it isn't fun and it isn't exciting. So I would like to commend this plan, and I hope very much you let me go down to consultation on it, and I hope we have road shows and we play with Lego and Play-Doh and goodness knows what else, tickle bricks, and that we also read documents and we read it on our phone, and that we get those people engaged, because already that brick by brick exhibition has engaged more people than I think I've ever seen engage with the local plan through all its processes, unless they were people that we forced it into their hands and asked them for the conversation. So much credit to everyone. This is a really great document, but it's the beginning and it's going to be greater. So thank you to everybody who's been involved, because it has been a long process.
Thank you for that, Councillor Morse. And I'll take my own advice, and I will be speaking to you and Ian about a group of people that we need to make sure gets involved in the consultations, and those are people who would like to live into Exeter and who maybe are of a generation which aren't engaged in, but do know how to use an iPad or a smartphone. Young people, what do they want? What do they want? How do they live? How do they want to socialise? How do they want their future communities to be? And I'll be talking to you about that. That's very important that we engage the young people on this as well. So those are the recommendations before us. Can I have all those in favour?
That's a unanimous vote, Chair. The recommendations have been carried.
Yes, and just to remind everybody, we voted to put the plan to consultation, not vote for the plan at the moment. So that is the end of the first part one of the meeting. So if you would like to I've got to vote, yes, that comes first. So we've got a vote to move into part two. I formally move the vote. Can I have a seconder, please? Right.
Chair, just draw attention to the representation received.
Do we do that publicly or in part two?
I just refer to what's on the agenda, just to highlight the reason why we're
Yep,
moving
okay.
to part two.
You're going to do that?
Yeah, I can just do a quick overview. As I said, Chair, it's on the front of the agenda. The representation was received about bringing the meeting about item 14 being in part 2. The proposed reason for the exemption is that it's in the public interest to maintain the confidentiality of the company's business matters, and in view of that the report does contain exempt information, therefore should be kept in part 2.
Okay, as I've said, I've moved that we go into part 2. I've had it seconded by the Deputy Leader. All those in favour?
That's unanimous, Chair. The meeting
Thank you very much.
Part 2.
Thank you.